Hello and welcome to Soul Food Words of Inspiration. Tonight, this is my fourth show, I do believe, and four is the representation of creation. So, I want to start the creation, the birthing process of it in a sense. Before I got on today, I was thinking about Kendrick Lamar's song I got loyalty and royalty inside of my DNA. And DNA, when you rearrange it, you get the word and. And what does it mean? Because we get so confused by our outer layers, our skin. Even the word skin contains the word ink in it. And God said He is the author, He is the writer. Um, and I want Him to be able to continue to write, write us a new beginning in a sense. The first three letters, the first three words in the Bible is in the beginning. And when I got on my spiritual journey, um, I became more thankful of my beginning. It wasn't perfect, but I'm glad at where He started me from. So you begin to look and view life more differently. Another word I was thinking about on today was the word stone. And when you think in the Bible, it references as Jesus is the rock of our salvation. So I look at a piece of stone as a rock, and stone contains the word notes in it. Learning to take notes from the Father because God establishes all tones. My beginning strangely started, um, like I said, I felt I came from this broken mother, and God positioned her in a way that she could be nurturing, and she trained me for what it is that I'm preparing myself to do today. I was telling God earlier today, I said, I am just so ready to retire. And that doesn't mean stop working, but I want to stop operating in my old life. And a lot of times we wonder why we can't move ahead or why a certain project can't take off because we're still trying to hold on to things that are broken, things that are old, things that are damaged when He said, give it to Him to let it go. And we try to, in a sense, we hold on to people and things due to loyalty. But at the end of the day, who is it that you're being loyal to? And learning the difference and learning to be loyal to God is what keeps us out of bondage. And I was wondering, I was like, man, my feet, they just feel heavy, they feel stagnant. And there were still things and people that I had to detach from and begin to let go. How can He give you something new if you're not willing to let go of what is old? I had to learn to really become still in order to hear the voice of the Lord. And even when I thought about the retirement, it has the word tire in it. And when I think about a tire, I think about the wheel. And He references in His word that we have to get onto the potter's wheel. And I always say life ministers to us indirectly, but we don't pay attention. Even as children, we're learning to, ride bikes or get on scooters, things that have wheels. It's the wheels that, carry us. It's the wheels that carries the car. And I had to allow God to pick me up so he could begin to shift the gears. I can remember when God was teaching me on how to change my response. And a lot of times we'll ask for things or ask for blessings of wealth and things of that magnitude, but truly don't prepare ourselves for it. Still jumping and flying off the handle. Wealth is something that is very hard to obtain, but it could be very easy to lose, predicated on how it is that you respond to a situation. And I had to learn to start changing my response. And I was doing slightly good for a long period of time, but I didn't like the person that showed up once again today. And that did it for me. That was the nail in the coffin. That's what said, you know what, you gotta let this go. Because God, he's a jealous God and he means what it is that he says. And I'm not so holy and biblical that I can't be real. The project it is that I'm presenting and bringing forth is to show, even in the Bible, God says he has unorthodox ways. He has unorthodox ways on bringing his word forth and for it to come to pass. Which brings me to think about Raheem Devon's song. He said, "The world has been changing. I wonder if God has left us hanging." Um, and he said, "We still ain't got no answers since Marvin left us." And Marvin Gaye, had a song, "What's Going On." And then here it is, it was rebirthed again through Raheem Devon, "What's Going On." And you think about it in hindsight today, what is really going on? And really contains the word real in it. And it's time to get real. It's time to get real with one another. It's really time for people to really step out of the shadows and come out of hiding. Even when I think about the stone, you know, it says Jesus is the rock of our salvation. So he was the first sacrifice. He got stepped on for all of us. And we don't mind stepping on top of stones, but when it's our turn, we cry, whoa. And it wasn't until maybe about 6 years ago, I felt like changing who it is that I was. I said, I'm tired of being nice. I'm tired of being stepped on. I'm tired of turning the other cheek. And when I was full of it, I used to, tell people like I only got two cheeks to turn and the other two on the backside they could kiss. And I don't feel that way anymore because when God is preparing you to bless you with an abundance, you don't worry about the mess. A lot of times we miscommunicate even with people, even and coming back into a situation, the argument comes because we already know we had a disagreement and I already know your position and you know mine, but we'll bring up what happened that day. It's like planning shit. If you gon' forgive, let it go, flush it, or wait for a time where God makes the conversation to be easier. But a lot of times we be in a rush. And I had to learn to have an expectation, but I don't mind humbly waiting. And a lot of times we get weary in the waiting process. And that's kind of what was, in a sense, happening with me. I was getting weary in the waiting process. But I had to think about it in hindsight, how long he waited on me to get it together. And that's something that I'm still working on daily as I'm still living. A lot of times, people will claim that we're grown. That's something that doesn't come out of my mouth anymore because I recognize that I am not grown. Grown contains the word own in it, and God owns this temple. So in the Bible, it references us as becoming mature adults. So if we're maturing, we're growing constantly, daily. Even in being a leader, a great leader, is always giving recognition to that we're constantly being led. Leader contains the word lad in it. And how I look at that is I'm a child of a great leader. And he put a leader inside of each and every one of us. But a lot of times, people get caught up, in a sense with titles, or your title is better than mine, but we all just carry one, and that's servant. I've always prayed, not for humbleness. I've always prayed for strength so I can stay humble, because that's something I don't want him to have to help me with. That's something I want to be able to work on. And we don't recognize, even with elevation, how much the ego can change. And you wonder why the word ego contains the word go in it, because something's going to have to go. That old spirit is going to have to leave. So, a lot of times, when he does take us to that place, we don't use those platforms properly. And I said, I don't want to end up elevating to a place where I have to have a rise and a fall to be able to get it. And I feel like we've seen a lot of leaders, come into that come into play with a lot of leaders having great rises and great falls. And it's not that um, you're not above falling down, or I'm not above falling down. It's just that that's something that I truly want to be able to work on. I want to be able to stand by the brand, the one who branded me. So I just look at it different. It's just something that I choose to work on. Even the word servant contains the word ant in it. And an ant sometimes doesn't recognize or know when it's about to be stepped on. You know what I mean? I look at it as a sacrificial insect. Nobody's looking to watch out for the ant as they're walking. But when I recognize and see one, I'm no longer trying to step on it. I'm in its environment. As long as it's not in my house, I feel like it's fair game. I'm not an extremist where I'm going to pick the bug up and take it outside. I would be lying to you. You have some people who operate in that mannerism, and that's the role it is that they intend to play. And it doesn't make it right or wrong, but examples. We're here to be the examples. We're here to um, inspire, nurture, and grow one another continuously up. And I pause like this sometimes because I get trapped also in another thought. So I do apologize. But like when I was just talking about the stepping stones God is looking for, willing servant, and his son was this first sacrifice. So who am I not to be willing to sacrifice for others if I aim and claim to be more like the Father? And the Son is the representation of the Father. And learning to step into that form and that type of humility is hard. And it gets to a point in time in your life where you're like, gosh, I get tired of turning the other cheek. I get tired of doing this, but we don't recognize that sometimes we continue to step in those same places and we have those same repeat conversations. So it's in a sense you like your abuser. You know what I mean? Growth contains the word worth in it. Once you recognize your worth, you learn to separate yourself. Um, you learn to change your response more. You learn not to um, come into so much conflict. You know, in the Bible it says, "Agree with your adversary quickly." It's not about the argument. It's not about the argument. Agree contains the word gear in it. And I'd rather give it to God and allow Him to shift it. That person may end up coming back to you later on, talking about it after they done thought about it, meditated on it, or had even a conversation with someone else, but we don't allow the space anymore for God to operate. You know, I can remember back in the day, it used to be like, life gonna catch up with that nigga. Life gonna catch up with that motherfucker soon enough. And you don't have that. We don't give people grace periods, but God gives us grace. It's like we've gotten too big. Ain't nobody gonna sit up here and disrespect me. But we disrespect God constantly, daily, and we are, still amongst the land of the living because He understands that we're still learning. Every day, whether it's a quick good morning, I've learned to give acknowledgement. I've learned to become more serious about the relationship. And that's how things begin to start moving. I learned to take my mind off of worry because a lot of times we'll get so focused on the calamity, it keeps us distracted from the things it is that we're supposed to be doing because people want to tell you what sympathy is supposed to look like. You know what I mean? People play different roles and different positions in life. And there's just so much miscommunication, things that could be taken care of with a conversation because we all operate differently. I mean, one of the pettiest things that I, see today sometimes is you could even answer your phone for someone and they hear you in the background or you might be getting the kid together or telling somebody to pass you. I guess you too busy to talk. Or they can't wait for the response. People get angry so quickly, and it's like if I didn't want to talk to you I would have never picked up the phone, not looking at it that even though I'm busy, you important to me. I picked up the phone for you to see if you needed something, not for the argument. And we don't ever sit back and think, as to how it is that we pull on people. Or say, for instance, you create a new bond with somebody else. We only got one life to live before we end up in the general hospital. And you want to be able to take advantage of life. You go through different seasons with different individuals. Doesn't mean I don't love you any less. And we have taken on people to become in a sense, comforters. And people have a problem when they lose their comforters. But some people can apply so much pressure, to the point you want to kind of step back. And we all need that space. We're all here to learn. And God gives us a taste of what the other side looks like in a sense. You know what I mean? Because as you start seeking him more, you run into more like-minded people. It's like a force shield. You start running into more believers. And I cross paths with many, you know what I mean? And it's beautiful to walk into a store or even at work interviewing people who are more like-minded, who will have a mind to serve God, and it's coming up naturally. It's not a question that's being asked. It's coming up naturally. When I think about the world and how it is today, I don't see us putting forth a lot of effort to change because we get stuck on the mess. We get stuck on the opinions instead of compiling the opinions and see what makes more sense. It seems like, in a sense, the compassion has been lost, patience has been lost. Everything is so fast paced now. And as time changes, condition changes too. But at the same token, what values are we leaving in place? And God left us with something to value, his word, his book. And I believe that book to be the Bible, which is why I believe, even in the word Bible, it's lie. The word lie is right on it because I believe he knew that people wouldn't believe. Even before you read about the sin taking place in Genesis, it's right in the word Genesis. Genesis contains the word sin already in it. So he was letting us know that that was going to be present, that was going to be a part of it. A lot of times we allow ourselves to stay in bondage. We stay in bondage of the upsets. We stay in bondage due to our past. Um, we stay in bondage in the mind due to not even wanting to take the time to change. A lot of people today are stuck, and I could honestly say that I was stuck for a long time too, because you think about all the what ifs, and it makes you think about where that saying came from. Um, if a if a if was a fifth, then we'll all be drunk, and we all wonder what if. But life changes, I feel like I don't feel like I know he knew what we were going to do before we even did it. And a lot of times in life, we try to hide behind the things that is that we've done. I had to learn to really stand in the mirror and look at myself. I could continue to cry, woe me. I can continue to talk about me being hurt, but where does that get me? It gets you nowhere, absolutely nowhere, absolutely nowhere. You have to start asking yourself, that person in the mirror, what is it that I need to start changing? And the biggest thing is learning to change our response. it's hard being quiet sometimes. And I can remember as a child, they used to always say, you always got to get the last word. That's why you get your ass kicked, because you always got to get the last word. And you would think as a child, if I got my ass whooped enough for always getting the last word, I would stop giving it. And I had to learn to just be quiet, not even to respond to it. Because how many times do you have to prove that you're a beast? How many times do you have to prove that you could win an argument? That means absolutely nothing. Instead of figuring out why it happened, the lesson behind it. And those are the things that I like to focus on, which is why it's hard to have a conversation with people, because it's not that I don't want to hear all of your story or all of what it is that you have to say. But the way it is that I choose to live my life now, I'm just in a different place. I'm not stuck on the mess. The mess doesn't excite me. What excites my spirit is learning why the calamity happened, why that storm came. What did we learn from it? What was God trying to teach us from it? And that's just where I'm at um, in life right now. And I think that's the biggest thing, is learning to change our response. Anybody could get angry, anybody could be loud, but do you honestly have something to say, something that is going to tear down a wall, something that is going to break these barriers? You see a lot of people wanting to be seen or get into, entertainment, but it comes with so much. And what are we influencing our children? Because we're glorifying the money aspect of it, but you don't have children saying they want to be doctors or lawyers anymore. So you can have all the money it is that you want in the world, but who's going to care for you? And God, even when He uniquely designed us, He designed us in a sense where we could give birth to our caregivers. And that's exactly what my mother did. She gave birth to her caregiver. So even though God gave her a gift to carry, he passed the torch, and I had to carry her for a long time, for a very very long time. And I used to um, have a lot of resentment in a sense, because I felt stuck and I couldn't do the things it is that I wanted to do to be able to enrich her life even more. So carrying things like that around makes you feel like a failure. A lot of times people will think your mind is stuck on them or a petty situation, and just doesn't they people don't understand people carry even deeper seated pains inside of them, things that they don't like to speak about, things that they don't like to talk about. But it's in a sense we have become abusers to one another. And I mean that in a sense, because our words, God is a corrector. God, He carries the rod. He is the one who gives correction. But we try to correct people all the time. We try to raise people instead of learning to raise their spirits. And it's not that you can't get your point across, but if you can't do it out of love, then don't do it at all. So I do apologize. Something came across my screen, a message. I do apologize, which made me lose my train of thought too. And I just want to be as transparent as possible, even on this podcast. Um, and I'm going to work on blocking people while I'm doing this so I don't get interrupted. But I say but one more time. I look at today as God seeking forth change. I know I wanted to be a part of that change. I know I did not have a problem sitting in my humility. Humility contains the word male in it, and male gets delivered. And when you talk about claiming the victory, I mean, claim contains the word male in it as well. And we have to learn to claim the deliverance even before it comes, even before it manifests. No different than the visions it is that God shows you, or where it is that you feel it is that you're supposed to be in life, and you feel as if you can't get there. But we're not willing to make some of the changes, smallest changes, learning to really take um, a leap of faith. Even before this podcast started, I've seen myself um, doing something on a social platform. Didn't know how it was going to happen, didn't know when it was going to take place, and I didn't know how it was going to happen or who God was going to connect me to. And a lot of times, once you just start ordering your steps and doing what it is that He's asking of you, things can begin to shift and move in your own life. And a lot of times, you know how a person is like, "Oh, I'm getting so tired of him. I'm getting so tired of the nigga. I'm getting so tired of his ass." Your spirit ministers to you, but you deal with tired. Tired contains the word diet in it. When you gonna restrict yourself? When you gonna let it go? And I had to learn to put myself on a diet from everything and everyone. You think about even when we eat, you want to eat, be able to eat a well balanced meal. But a lot of times people will put something extra on your plate that you just may not like. And it doesn't mean that you have to eat it all. And God allows us to taste it. You know what I mean? That nastiness. Sometimes it is that we project our own selves. And I could say, even with the relationship with my daughter, I've gotten a chance to taste some of the stuff I was putting on my mother's plate. But we'll cry and we'll woe instead of learning to become more gentle with that spirit. We fight fire with fire. We do the same thing with the next generation instead of trying something different. And I can remember as God was edifying my mother, she was like, "And Sharita, you got to stop cussing and cussing her out." And I was just like, "Gosh, but you did it." But when you know better in life, you do better. You know what I mean? And during that time, I wasn't trying to hear it. I wasn't trying to hear me. I wasn't trying to look at me in the mirror. And I noticed when my responses began to become more quieter, and I learned to still do even beyond my pain or how it was that I was feeling, I saw God manifesting and bringing forth so much change. And if you don't change, change contains the word hang in it. You'll always hang in the same space in life if we don't make those changes. And a lot of times with serving God, and I could say I, have started. I've went to church my whole life. Don't get me wrong. I grew up in church. I went to private school. So, but this was the first time I took a walk of consistency. And even when you think about the word walk, it contains the word laws in it. So I learned to obey God's laws. I learned to obey his principles, and not saying that I was perfect by any means all the way through. Through contains the word rough and tough already in it. So I knew things were going to be rough. I knew things were going to be tough, but I still pressed and made my way through, and I stayed consistent. It's no different than getting in the gym and wanting to exercise. Faith contains the word fit in it. I had to get fit. And with every step of elevation were different levels of tests. But the tests are so close, you feel like you can't bear it at times. But it would have no effect if it just came from a random stranger. It would lose its savor. It wouldn't penetrate the same. And penetrate contains the word treat in it. And there's a lot of, things we can relate penetration to where you feel like you're getting a treat, but you're getting a treat in another way because the exposure brings forth more clarity. It's sometimes the messes that happen in life that brings forth revelation to who it is that you even sit amongst sometimes. Even in life with separating from a mate, be like, oh, I think I should just, think I should just stop talking to him. I think I should just let it go. Think contains the word hint in it. Even the word think contains the word hint in it. And I've learned to take all my hints from God. I've learned to become more keen. Think also contains the word ink in it. God is the author. That's who I want to get my hints from. A lot of times, even when we birth out an invention or an idea, or there's a talent that we're born with, it came from somewhere. And even though God allows us to claim the victories, we don't give back the glory in return, recognition of the one who it is that gave it to us in the beginning. And I've learned to not take credit. I've learned to not take credit. It wasn't about um, taking credit. Even though you give credit in life where credit is due, I do believe that, but you give honor where honor is due as well. And I've learned to give honor to God. I've learned to give honor to the one who it is that gave it to me. And when you begin to change and transition and you allow yourself to get onto that potter's wheel, he has to break you down. So during that 6 year process, I went through some emotional battles. I got ready for my mother's funeral in my office because I was homeless. And you get taken to a broken place. But when you think about clay being broken down, to me, it looks like a lump of shit. So you know you're going to encounter some shit. You're going to go through some things, but that doesn't just mean run in the other direction. That doesn't mean be Peter. And we all have a Peter in us. And maybe that's why, even in Peter's name, Peter contains the word tree in it. And God knew he was going to have to mature. God knew he was going to have to grow up. And one thing about a tree, the leaves, they fall, they become bare. But God restored. And I look at the restoration because he allowed him to come back to the table. And so many of us, we don't allow, people to come back to the table. And it doesn't mean that you got to sit at the table with me, but that does mean I do have to feed my brother. I could imagine, and that doesn't mean that I'm going to tell my brother he can't sit at the table, but it would be hard for you to take that step towards that table because if the shoe was on the other foot, you would know what position I'm sitting in that moment. And it even takes time for wounds to heal, but the mere fact that I didn't forget about you and I included you, I think it's just a beautiful thing for all of us to just be able to be in a room. And I was looking at the battle between Gucci Man and Jeezy, and I think that was really big of them to come together in the same place. And in a sense, that's kind of what we need to get into gear and doing, learning to step into the same place, but for a different purpose. And that purpose being God. Not saying I gotta like you, but taking those steps to progression, still being able to be in the same room. I can remember when my great grandmother was living, if there was a function going on for her, like her birthday celebration or an appreciation dinner, you had to be present. No matter what your battle was, no matter what you look like at that moment, you have to walk in your humility. You have to walk in that door. And everybody knew to keep their temperament together. You save that stuff for the outside. And I just hope even the outside just starts to clean up and get a little bit more better. Even the word better contains the word tree in it. So trees, they go through a restoration period as well. And if you're getting better, you're working on getting well. It's not about being perfect, but we have to at least start working towards changing. We can't stay stuck in the mentality it is that we are in today. There's too much, miscommunication. You think about even with dating has even changed so much. There's so much miscommunication because people are still carrying past hurts, which allows us to hear things differently or it sounds the same. Women, in a sense, I feel like you're no longer trying to be superwoman. You want to be Superman. And even the word Superman contains the word purse in it. And just carry it. Be a lady. I can remember, women used to be able to get their points across using metaphors. They were real slick with their mouths. And they knew how sometimes to do it gently and do it out of love. And that is an artistry, I feel like, in an etiquette that has been lost. I feel like the worst thing to do in a, new relationship is the texting because we hear tones differently. People create their own tones, and it all depends on the headspace it is that you are in at that moment. So much communication comes from so many different frivolous things. That's why I feel like the interaction is important, and the interaction has been lost. Here it is, we have COVID, and now people have to social distance. But now people are having a problem social distancing. And I really don't get it because everything you hear and see out of a person's mouth is, I don't fuck with this one, or I don't fuck with that one, or I don't need nobody around me. I don't need nobody. But we all need somebody and we all need one another. And it's like we destroy one another with our words. God gives us a word that is potent, but we use words, and words contains the word sword in it, and a sword can cut. But one thing about word and words, it both contains the word rod in it, and God holds it. And we have to allow Him to give correction to our tongues. Even the word tongue contains the word gun in it. So this thing constantly fires off. And from this thing fires off, other weapons begin to fire off. People begin to take hits. Instead of learning to hold it. Even the word tongues contains the word tones in it. And we have to allow God to really adjust our tone. Tongues contains the word note in it. We have to take note from God before it is that we begin to speak. Speak contains the word spake in it. So I'm gonna wait till He speak it to me before I can give it. And a lot of times in life we speak out of turn. I want us to become more conscious of how it is that we begin to handle one another. And I feel like we have entered into a place where respect has been lost, courtesy has been lost. There's so much rage, so much rage. And even rage contains the word gear in it, and we got to get it in gear. Rage contains the word age in it. Age references years, it represents time. And we have to learn to give each other more time. We have to learn to give one another that space. We have to learn to walk away, outdistance myself a lot of times because I value people and I value relationships too much to end up saying the wrong thing or hearing you say the wrong thing. It's a form of protection for both of us. But I'll never be the person that you encounter and I'm frowning up at. I'm like, hey, you act like you got dementia. I act like I got amnesia. I'm cool with it as long as respect is shown. And that's what's important. But people get caught up on the way that a story is being told, and everybody has a side. But one thing about a side, it got the word die in it. Some stuff is just meant to die. Just let it go. Even Tony Braxton, I look at, it was a message in one of her songs, let it go, let it flow. Everything's going to work all right. But you got to learn to truly let go. Even when we pray contains the word pry in it. We constantly try to put our hands in the midst of it to still work on it or figure it out, or we get lost in the thought of it, or what we should have did, or what we should have done, or I'm gonna call this person. We have to learn to really just stop. We have to really learn to just stop. I can remember back in the day, you might have told your uncle a story and he'd be like, everything gonna work out, don't worry about it. I'm telling you, just go in there and lay down and get you some rest. And then you find out the next day that everything is okay. And life is full of tests. And you never know how they're going to come at you, but how we end up repeating them so many times is not given recognition as to why these things are happening. So as you serve God, you look at life differently. In the Bible, it says, acknowledge me in all ye things. So I learned to give acknowledgement in all things. And that's what caused me to be able to change my response, because God will begin to feed you and embed you with knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is to know, and wisdom is to do. And we have to know what it is to do with it. I'm I don't know if it's time yet. I'm getting ready and prepared to get ready to close. But the next show, I do want to bring someone on. I'm not going to say who, but I'm going to give you guys an experience of when I meet people, how it is that we begin to interact, the draw, the immediate information that God begins to um, feed me um, about an individual. And it happens likewise, how confirmations begin to come about. It's hard to start speaking right now because I want everybody to be able to get to know how it is that I think I flip, rearrange words sometimes, just so we can all get used to one another. But I think in bringing someone on, um, will give people a base of what that is like and how natural experiences occur. I thank everyone for tuning in tonight. I hope some of the word helped someone. And God bless you all. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.